Okay, this finally brings us to the January 6th extravaganza last night. Now, the Democrats really have one shot at this. And they have like a 2-hour primetime slot provided to them by all the major news networks simultaneously. And if you looked, literally the only channel that covers news that was not covering this was Fox News, which had Tucker and Hannity on. And the Democrats immediately make a huge blunder. And their blunder is they're going to allow Congress people to grandstand. This is the stupidest thing. It is incredibly stupid because here's the thing. If the Democratic agenda is to grandstand, if it is an electoral ploy, you at least don't want to let the American public know that it's an electoral ploy. And yet they lead off with Benny Thompson. And so here's the thing about Benny Thompson. Leading off with Benny Thompson is a really dumb idea because Benny Thompson happens to be one of the people who voted against certification of the 2016 election. So if you're talking about the danger to the Republic in not voting to certify legitimate elections, this seems like a bad person to lead it off. But not only did Benny Thompson lead it off, he decided to make claims that he could not sustain. So he leads off by saying that the violence was no accident on January 6th. The implication being, of course, that it was planned top down. Now, you can say that there was internal planning among some groups of Oath Keepers, groups of Proud Boys. You can say, oh, that's true. Fine. A lot of those people are under criminal indictment for conspiracy, for insurrection. A lot of those people are actually under criminal indictment. Many of them are in jail right now. But the implication here is that there's going to be evidence that they show that shows a direct connection between the Trump White House and therefore you, the Trump voter, and what happened on January 6th. That's the implication he's going to attempt to draw. And then they provide no evidence to back this up.
Any legal jargon you hear about seditious conspiracy, obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the United States boils down to this. January 6th was the culmination of an attempted coup, a brazen attempt, as one writer put it shortly after January 6th, to overthrow the The violence was no accident. It represented Trump's last stand, most desperate chance to halt the transfer of power.
Yeah, again, they're performing a magical conflation. Conflation number one, you're a Trump voter. Therefore, you support everything that Trump said between November 4th and January 6th. Two, even if you support what he said between November 4th and January 6th, which was based on Trump saying things that were not true, this means that you support a riot. Three, if you support people in the Capitol grounds, this means you support the overthrow of democracy. So this is like, and also if you vote against Democrats today, you support all those things, right? That's the conflation Benny Thompson is attempting to draw. By the way, he objected to the 2004 vote certification. It was Jamie Raskin, who is also on this committee, who attempted to overturn the 2016 election by objecting to the certification of Florida's votes. Okay, but he didn't stop there, Benny Thompson. Again, if you're grandstanding, you got to grandstand. This is all the lead up, right? This is so stupid because everybody who's in the middle and watching this turns off the TV. Right? You get 9 minutes of these guys jabbering at the camera about how this is like the Ku Klux Klan and lynching. And people are like, really? Why didn't you lead up? I mean, the first rule is you start with a stinger, right? Why wouldn't you at least start with the videos that you end up showing here? Hey, here's Benny Thompson.
I'm Benny Thompson, chairman of the January 6th, 2021 committee. I was born, raised, and still live in Bolton, Mississippi, a town with a population of 521, which is midway between Jackson and Vicksburg, Mississippi, and the Mississippi River. I'm from a part of the country where people justify the actions of slavery, the Ku Klux Klan, and lynching. I'm reminded of that dark history as I hear voices today try and justify the actions of the insurrectionists on January 6, 2021.
This is such dumb politics. It's so stupid. If you're going to lead with the supposed revelation of new evidence, lead with the supposed revelation of new evidence. Don't lead with a heavily partisan Democrat jabbering at you about how January 6th was akin to lynching black people in the South. Because January 6th was really bad. You know what was worse? Actually murdering black people in the South by hanging them from trees. I can't believe that I have to say this out loud. Like this is insane. It's a ridiculous way to lead this off. Okay, the person who actually led the effort to try and drive the narrative here was Liz Cheney. And the reason that the Democrats used Liz Cheney here, of course, is because she is a Republican. And I will say that it is quite amusing to see the strange new respect earned by the Cheney family as Liz Cheney becomes sort of a useful pawn in the Democratic agenda. Again, I'm not doubting Liz Cheney's motivations here. I'm not suggesting that Liz Cheney is somehow out for her own interests. because she's probably going to lose in her congressional race right now in Wyoming. Okay, well, what I am suggesting is that Liz Cheney is overdrawing conclusions because that strange new respect goes to one's head. So Liz Cheney begins by laying out what she calls Trump's 7-part plan to take over the country in the aftermath of the 2020 election. Now, again, she's going to have to explain which part of this plan actually involved sending rioters into the Capitol building to run around like idiots wearing buffalo horns and then get rousted from the Capitol within 3 hours. Because that's the thing we're supposedly talking about here, right? We're not talking about Donald Trump promulgating untruths between November 4th and January 6th. That's not what this investigation is about. There's a big dot over here. Trump wanted to overturn 2020 election. And then a bunch of legal mechanisms, and he filed a bunch of lawsuits, and he had this bizarre theory about how Mike Pence was going to throw out certified votes and all this crap. Okay, that's dot number one. And then over here, you have an actual full-scale riot in the Capitol building with people getting hurt. And you have to connect those dots because this hearing is about this dot. It is not about this dot. And so she suggests those dots are going to be connected, but then she actually never connects the dots. So here's Liz Cheney.
On the morning of January 6th, President Donald Trump's intention was to remain president of the United States, despite the lawful outcome of the 2020 election and in violation of his constitutional obligation to relinquish power. Over multiple months, Donald Trump oversaw and coordinated a sophisticated 7-part plan to overturn the presidential election and prevent the transfer of presidential power. In our hearings, you will see evidence of each element of this plan.
Man, probably should impeach that guy and maybe he shouldn't be president anymore. Oh, wait, you did that twice. Okay, there was an impeachment of Donald Trump after January 6th. It took place in the House. The impeachment did not actually allege criminal activity by Donald Trump, and it was rooted in January 6th based on incitement, which was not legally met. And also, Donald Trump isn't president. He hasn't been president since January 20th of 2021. So what exactly does this have to do with the riots, per se? And she says that Donald Trump and the White House received reports that elements were preparing for violence. Okay, and presumably so did Speaker Pelosi, who didn't request preemptive security from the Capitol Police. I mean, it seems like everyone was taken unawares. Now, again, none of this is to alleviate responsibility for Trump between, 2:26 p.m. and 5 o'clock p.m. There's like a 2.5-hour period where people were breaking into the Capitol building, and it's unclear exactly what Trump was doing before he sent that little video message telling people to go home, etc. But here is Liz Cheney suggesting active coordination. Again, you have to actually show evidence of active coordination if you're going to claim active coordination.
Although certain former Trump officials have argued that they did not anticipate violence on January 6th, the evidence suggests otherwise. As you will see in our hearings, the White House was receiving specific reports in the days leading up to January 6th, including during President Trump's Ellipse rally, indicating that elements in the crowd were preparing for violence at the Capitol.
Okay, now you can be given that information, that there are elements of the crowd preparing for violence at the Capitol. That does not mean that you then told them, go ahead and attack the Capitol building. This is, again, is the dot they refuse to draw. And again, you don't have to alleviate responsibility on Trump for not doing enough while the riots were going on. And also, what's the referendum here? That Trump acted badly that day and that he said ugly things that day? Well, color me shocked. So Liz Cheney said that Trump said that Pence deserved to be hanged, right? When people were chanting, hang Mike Pence, that Trump had said offhandedly to somebody, Trump deserved to be hanged. That's really bad. And that's really, really ugly, obviously. Also, Trump then allowed Mike Pence to activate the National Guard. So here's Liz Cheney.
You will hear that President Trump was yelling and, quote, really angry at advisors who told him he needed to be doing something more. And aware of the rioters' chants to hang Mike Pence, the president responded with this sentiment, quote, maybe our supporters have the right idea. Mike Pence, quote, deserves it.
Okay, now, when Liz Cheney says this sort of stuff, listen, it's a shocking thing for the president of the United States to say. Also, is anyone shocked? Like, if you're going to provide new information, it actually should be presumably new information. Now, Cheney is essentially making the case that Trump refused to call off the rioters. He didn't do enough to call off the rioters. Again, that was known like day of. We all remember this. Here's the thing about these hearings. if you're going to have a hearing, it's got to be about something we didn't know. It can't be about stuff that we knew because we were watching it in real time on that day. And you got every element of what Trump was thinking that day and in like the next 2 days that followed. I believe one of the charges in the impeachment was something about how Trump had basically been derelict in not activating the Capitol Police and not activating the National Guard in time. So what is the case that she is making here? Is the case that Donald Trump actively organized with these people, that he was derelict in not calling people off, that he was derelict in not activating the National Guard in time? Again, all of that's been fairly well established, except for the first point, which is the whole idea that this was an insurrection organized by not just Donald Trump, the entire Republican Party in coordination, the same Republican Party that's out there trying to rig elections today, vote Democrat. That's the part they never quite established. So here's Liz Cheney saying that Trump refused to do anything to call off the rioters. And again, this is not shocking to me because this was pretty clear at the time.
You will hear testimony that, quote, the president did not really want to put anything out calling off the riot or asking his supporters to leave. You will hear evidence that President Trump refused for hours to do what his staff, his family, and many of his other advisors begged him to do: immediately instruct his supporters to stand down and evacuate the Capitol.
Yeah, now, again, what are they trying to establish here? What is the goal here? The goal is to suggest an ongoing threat to American democracy, not that Donald Trump acted badly. By the way, again, Mike Pence, the vice president of the United States, did contact General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and told him to activate the National Guard. That is a thing that did happen, and the Capitol building was cleared. So what exactly is the attempt to establish here? The attempt is electoral in nature. All of these things can be true at the same time. People acted in ugly fashion, in bad fashion, in criminal fashion. Donald Trump acted very badly that day. He said things that were untrue between November 4th and January 6th. He had a duty to activate the National Guard ASAP as soon as people were going into the Capitol building. He apparently did not fulfill that duty, which we knew based on the simple timeline. Okay, all of that stuff can simultaneously be true. And also, inflation stats this morning, 8.6%, the highest since 1981. So where do you think Americans are going to put their focus? On a thing that we knew a year ago and that was really ugly and that Donald Trump is no longer president and was impeached over, or the fact that their wages went down over the course of the last year 3.4%. Which one do you think is going to play more with the American public? How's this for a title? Ben Shapiro Show subscriber destroys like button with clicks and logic. I'd watch that. Make it happen, gang.